most important aspects in life is protecting the wildlife. The wildlife drives the Earth's biodiversity. Biodiversity is the diversity, or variety, of plants and animals and other living things in a particular area or region. Without biodiversity, there would be nothing on the Earth. One of the important aspects of biodiversity is that each species of vegetation and creature play a particular role of the circle of life. Protecting their food, shelter, oxygen, and soil enrichment will keep the ecosystem thriving. Our society created many different ways of keeping the wildlife and animal populations up to par. Habitat management and population management are necessary to controlling the population of game animals and fish, and take a big part in protecting the habitat they live in. The significance of wildlife to society is a big deal. It's keep everything moving the way it should be. The functioning of the biosphere depends on the interactions among its animals, plants, and microorganisms. The health of nature and wildlife can help humans' life expectancy be higher. Wildlife maintains the balance of nature and the food chain. There can be ways that harming the wildlife can also be beneficial. For example, many wild trees are used for timber and paper, while some plants can be used for medicine. The recreational use for wildlife draws attention to people also. Fishing, hunting, and hiking are popular examples. There are many places to fish. Lots of lakes, ponds, streams, rivers, and even dams. Different places to fish offer different types of fish. A lake would contain more variety of fish than a river or creek, mainly because it is bigger. A bigger body of water can withstand the pressure of different kinds of fish as long. Wildlife is a term that refers to animals that are not normally domesticated. They are a living resource that will die and be replaced by others of their kind. Wildlife plays an important role in balancing the environment and provides stability to different natural processes of nature. It can be found in all ecosystems, desert, rainforests, plains, and other areas. India's wildlife is both rich and varied. It includes all flora and fauna, animals, plants, and macroorganisms. Wildlife is important for its beauty, economic, scientific, and survival value. It helps to maintain the ecological balance of nature and maintains the food chain. It provides useful substances and wild animal products like ivory, leather, honey, tusk, etc. Besides being a country's cultural asset, it also provides aesthetic value to man. We largely depend on wildlife for every elementary requirement in our life, for example, the clothes we wear and the medicines we consume. Wildlife conservation encompasses all human activities and efforts directed to preserve wild animal from extinction. It involves both protection and scientific management of wild species. Wildlife and nature have largely been associated with humans for numerous emotional and social reasons. Wildlife plays an essential role in the ecological and biological processes that are yet again significant to life. The normal functioning of the biosphere depends on endless interaction among animals, plants, and microorganisms. Wildlife has occupied a special place of veneration and preservation in various cultures of the world. Wildlife is all the organisms that live on the surface of the globe. They are diverse and numerous, as each lives in its appropriate environment. And these organisms feed on food suitable for them. They hunt for her own food without the help of humans. As for domestic animals, they are the opposite of wild creatures, as they live in homes and eat food prepared for them by humans. And don't go out of the house unless accompanied by people, including dogs and cats, which are the most popular pets. The location of wild animals. Wild animals live in many places on the surface of the globe. Some of them live in the mountains and highlands, including what lives in thick forests and above trees. There are animals that live in the desert, where where they adapt to heat and lack of water. The seas and oceans have a huge number of living organisms. And we will not forget the fresh rivers, which contain different species from those that live in salt water. And around the cities, we find some wild animals that lived in the same place before humans occupied it. Wild animal species. There are two types of wild animals, some of which are peaceful and do not represent any dangers to humans or other species. These peaceful animals feed on plants only and do not eat any kind of meat. Among the most famous of these animals are rabbits and deer. The other type is predators that feed on the meat of other animals, including the lion, tiger, foxes, and wolves. These species represent a great danger to residential communities and humans. Threats to wildlife. There are several threats to wildlife, including the risk of expulsion from their lands due to the construction of new cities for humans. As the number of people increased, they needed new places to live, which drives them to remove the wildlife of forests and green spaces. This encroachment on land causes the killing of the environment and the extinction of the living creatures that live in it. With time, we see a noticeable decrease in the numbers of birds and reptiles due to cutting down trees. The second danger to wildlife is pollution. When factories are built near rivers and seas, they pour deadly waste into the water. These residues kill huge numbers of marine organisms. The toxic gases from the factories also kill the birds that live near the factories. Over time, the marine creatures and birds begin to decrease until one day they disappear. Poaching is considered one of the most horrific things that cause the eradication of wildlife of all kinds. When humans catch some fish using explosives, they kill huge quantities and sizes, which causes the death of large fish that lay eggs. This reduces the number of fish over time. Hunting rules must be strictly followed, and the species that the laws provide for protection should not be hunted. How do we protect wildlife? In order to protect wildlife, we must prevent the causes that destroy it. Of course, we must cut down trees and go deep into the forests with great care, and it is better to refrain from this violation once and for all. We must maintain the laws of hunting and not violate them so as not to cause the extinction of certain species. We must plant new trees and allocate areas of land to become nature reserves in which we protect threatened species. These wild animals face great danger as they are subjected to overhunting. It may be expelled from the environment in which it has been living for years due to the desire of humans to expand and build. That is why we must alert people to the danger of eliminating these organisms, and that we must preserve them because of the ecological balance that may be disrupted after their extinction, which will lead to the destruction of the entire planet. Wildlife conservation word reminds us of saving the resources which have been provided to us as nature's gift. Wildlife represents the animals that are not domesticated or tamed. They are just wild animals and living in total wilderness. The conservation of such animals and plant species so that they may be out of the danger of extinction is termed wildlife conservation. It is the sole and social responsibility of human beings, on an individual basis. One should try to conserve our renewable resources. They are precious and must be used up in a wise manner. The wildlife creatures and plants add beauty to our nature. Their uniqueness, beautiful voice of some birds and animals makes the surrounding and the habitat pleasing and wonderful. protection of the species of wildlife from extinction or vanishing by applying suitable methods is termed as wildlife conservation. The wild animals and plants play an important role in the ecosystem they reside. This is the outcome of the way in which man is changing the lifestyle and advancements in way of living. The enormous cutting of trees and forests is leading to the destruction of the habitats of wildlife. The thoughtless deeds of human beings are responsible for the mass extinction of the wildlife species. The act of hunting and poaching is also a punishable offense. No wildlife species must be killed for the enjoyment purpose. The wild animals and plants are playing an important role in maintaining ecological balance. Their importance could not be denied. There are several factors that are a threat to wildlife creatures. The increasing pollution, temperature and climatic changes, overexploitation of resources, irregular hunting and poaching, loss of habitat, etc. are major causes for the deterioration of wildlife. There are many of the government acts and policies formulated and amended in the direction for the conservation of wildlife. The act of protecting the species of wild plants and animals from becoming extinct is termed as wildlife conservation. The same is achieved through the execution of different plans and policies by the human being. The wildlife is an important factor of our ecosystem. Without their existence, the ecological balance will turn to an imbalanced state. As each and every creature has its right to exist and therefore they must be provided with a proper habitat and conditions. But the conditions prevailing are totally different. Man has become so much selfish in his desires that he forgot that other organisms have the same right. The different illegal practices, advancements, needs have led to the creation of a situation which is an alarming one. There are several factors leading to the destruction of wildlife. Habitat loss, the unwanted clearing of forests and agricultural land to make several building projects, roads, dams is leading to major habitat loss of different wildlife animals and plants. These activities deprive animals of their home. As a result, either they have to move to some other habitat or becomes extinct. Overexploitation of resources. The resources are meant to use up in a wise manner, but if used in an unnatural way, leads to overexploitation of the same. The overuse will foster the extinction of the species. Hunting and poaching. The act of hunting and poaching is really a miserable one as it involves the trapping and killing up of animals for the enjoyment of obtaining some product. Some of the animal's products are valuable ones, for example, ivory, skin, horn, etc. They are obtained by making the animals captive or hunting and further killing them after obtaining the product. This is leading to increasing mass extinctions. An example is musk deer. Using animals for research purpose, there are many of the animals chosen for testing results in the laboratory of research institutes. Taking them in such a large number of results in the mass extinction of the species. Pollution, the unwanted changes in the state of the environment leads to a result in a polluted one. And so is the air, water, soil pollution. But the alteration in the quality of the air, water, the soil is directly responsible for the reduction in the number of animal and plant species. The marine biodiversity is greatly affected by the contaminated water. The chemicals present in the water ruptures the functional activities of marine biota. The coral reef is greatly affected by the temperature changes and contamination. Wildlife conservation is the phenomenon of protection and management of wildlife facing the danger of extinction. Wildlife is an important feature of our ecology. They are the animals or plants which are the supporting systems of our ecosystem. They are living in wilderness in some forests or jungles. They are helping in maintaining our ecological balance. The inhuman practices are leading wildlife creatures to become endangered or extinct. India is rich in biodiversity, but there are many factors leading to the loss of the same. Factors leading to wildlife destruction. Overexploitation of resources. Habitat loss. Pollution. Habitat fragmentation. Hunting and poaching. Climatic changes. Types of wildlife conservation. In situ conservation. In this type of conservation, species of plants and animals, and their genetic material are protected or conserved within their habitat. The areas are termed as protected areas. They are national parks, sanctuaries, biosphere reserves. Ex situ conservation. This conservation technique involves conservation or protection of the species of plants and animals and also the genetic material outside their habitat. This is done in form of gene banks, cryopreservation, tissue culture, captive breeding, and botanical gardens. Importance of wildlife conservation. Ecological balance. Aesthetic and recreational value. Promotes to maintain biodiversity. Types of wildlife conservation. In situ conservation. In this type of conservation, species of plants and animals, and their genetic material are protected or conserved within their habitat. The areas are termed as protected areas. They are national parks, sanctuaries, biosphere reserves. Ex situ conservation. This conservation technique involves conservation or protection of the species of plants and animals and also the genetic material outside their habitat. This is done in form of gene banks, cryopreservation, tissue culture, captive breeding, and botanical gardens. Importance of wildlife conservation. Ecological balance. Aesthetic and recreational value. Promotes to maintain biodiversity. Project Elephant. The increased developmental activities like construction of roads, railways, resorts, buildings are leading to the clearing up many forests and grazing spaces, which results in the destruction of the habitat of different wild animals. The same was observed with elephants too. Project Elephant was launched by the Indian government in 1992 to conserve the number of elephants, maintenance of their habitat, reduce human-animal conflicts, as well as reduce hunting and poaching. This project was launched at the central level, but the initiative was taken up by the states. Funds were also provided to different states according to the requirements. 16 states were mainly implementing the act. Crocodile Conservation Project. This project was launched in 1975 at different state levels. The objective of the project was to prevent the habitat destruction of the crocodiles and thus helping to increase their numbers. The hunting and killing of the crocodiles should be monitored. As a result of this initiative, the numbers have been increased from 100 to 1,000 till 2012. UNDP Sea Turtle Conservation Project. This project, launched by UNDP, aims at properly managing and conserving the reducing numbers of the turtle population. The results of population explosion and urbanization have to lead to an increase in the activities of cutting down forests and turning them into buildings, hotels, or places of human settlements. This results in a reduction of the habitat of different forest-dwelling species. They have to leave those places and search for new habitat, which is not very easy. The search for new habitat, a lot of competition for food, carries many of the species towards the verge of extinction. Wildlife animals and plants are important aspects of nature. A loss at any level may lead to unnatural consequences. They are responsible for the ecological balance and for the sustenance of mankind. The balance must be maintained. Therefore, along with the conservation efforts by the government, it's our social responsibility to individually put our efforts in conservation of the wildlife.